Good morning. I'd like to call the special Door County Board of Supervisors meeting to order on May 14th at approximately 10:10 a.m. Would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which stands one nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wow.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yep, we must have to get that.
Present, yeah.
Present button.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Present? Yep.
That's.
Please, can you tell them to please hit their present? We got days and early.
Please hit the present button.
We have a narrator.
Actually, we're just not gonna wait. We're gonna just.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, presentation of the agenda.
You can make them. Second.
Oh,
All in
Use our
favor?
buttons? Maybe, or not? Does it like you use a button on this one?
No.
No?
There's nothing coming up.
All right, we'll have to do it this way this time.
How do we?
I will make it change for the next time.
Okay, so what do we have to do for this one?
I guess we'll have to do I'll make a motion.
I'll make a motion to.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Correspondence. None noted. Public comment. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make comment?
There we go. And we don't have a raise our hand option in here.
You can request to speak on, well, no,
I can't.
Hey, I can't move
Yeah.
my.
let me try just 1 minute. Does that give you anything different?
Yes.
Yea, nay, abstain, absent.
Voting choice. Yes, no, absent.
I have vote results came up.
Where's my raising hand option?
Hey, I can't scroll up or down.
It says public comment and motion.
There now.
Can you scroll to the different pages on your?
That's mine.
You have to click on it. Does
I
it go
Public
sideways?
comment and down below it says motion.
Yes, so we have what you're asking for now. Motion and request to speak.
It should be a blue button.
Does it go this way?
No.
No.
Huh.
Because you're the chair and you never get to request to speak.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Sorry, I forgot.
So just stay quiet. I got it. Okay.
Sorry.
So and just let that Joel would speak to the peninsula location.
And I don't know if they can speak. If you were gonna have.
I did.
Is there audience?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're trying to raise our hand.
Joe, do you want to speak?
Yeah, we got them on mute. We're trying to raise.
You want me to go in there? Can I go in there and speak? I mean,
I think you just have to unmute you. I'll let you.
yeah, you're on. You want me to do it from here? You don't want me to go in there? I mean, I'd rather go in there if that's okay.
So you're in. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we don't see any more.
Okay. I mean, it's just.
Good. There.
I have to speak from the hallway.
In the window. You can come up first?
Yeah.
Do you want me to speak now?
Yeah.
Oh, it's supposed to.
Well, good morning, everyone. Obviously, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Supreme Court decision, and I don't want to be political about it at all, but I do need to give a little background, I guess, on what happened, so that we can understand, I guess, what's going on going forward. So, as you probably know, on March 12th, the governor declared a state of emergency, and by statute, that gives him 60 days of emergency powers, whereby he can do most everything by himself. You know, he doesn't need legislative approval as he normally would. So the safer at home policy, the essential and non-essential businesses, all that kind of thing, that of course came out of all of that. He chose. We could have. I will say, the legislature could have rescinded those powers at any time. We have that authority by resolution. We could have taken those away, but nobody ever discussed that. We respect that it's a time of emergency. We want to give the government, the opportunity to deal with it. We all respect that. So that was never discussed. And I think I've been very careful not to criticize any of his actions along the way, but I will criticize, I guess, his not including us in any discussions, which I think is part of the problem in how we ended up where we were. So it seemed that he would have wanted to include us because we all knew that as of May 12th, those powers would expire, and then he would have to come back to us, and we would have to agree on anything he did. So it would seem logical that he would have wanted to include us on the discussion so that when we came out of that on May 12th, we would have a plan in place and we could present a united front. But as it got close to May 12th, of course, then he decided that Secretary Designee Andrea Palm, as the Department of Health Services Secretary, had the authority to continue that order, the safer at home order, for as long as she deemed necessary. So that again would have excluded us from any discussions forever, basically. So we asked the Supreme Court to rule on whether that was legal or not. Now, what we asked for was that we be allowed 6 days, if they ruled in our favor, to negotiate a settlement with the governor, because that's all we were ever asking for, was just an opportunity to negotiate and come up with a plan. They ruled that because it was illegal, it would end right now. And so there is no 6 days, which is why we're kind of in the uproar that we're in. Now, I began hearing a couple of days ago that was a possibility that they could rule that way. So I called Dave, and I think that's probably part of the reason that's on the agenda this morning to discuss that, so he wouldn't be totally blindsided by that. The speaker and the Senate Majority Leader, I know last night, reached out to the governor, and hopefully they're meeting right now to discuss what they will be doing going forward. But anything that they do is going to take a little bit of time. They're not, they won't be putting safer at home back in place right away. So really, what's going to happen is that it's going to fall on local governments, and I think the local governments do have a lot more authority than the public has ever been led to believe on this. So, in a way, I think that's sort of the right way to go. I've sort of always thought that government closest to home is, rules the best. And, the situations are different in different counties. I mean, my primary constituency is Door County and Kewaunee County. And in Door County, of course, you can always reason with your own citizens and with your own business owners and all that, and hopefully get them on board. But in Door County, where we have thousands of people coming in visiting, it's a lot more difficult to manage. So I suspect we will be handling a lot differently here than they will in Kewaunee County, where they don't have those same concerns. So I think that there is some merit to this being done on the local level, and I trust you guys to work with with the medical team and with public health and work that out. I would also urge you, I guess, to reach out to law enforcement. I talked to Arlie Porter and Colleen Nordine and Tammy Sturgeon just before I came over here this morning. They called because they, of course, have concerns about how it will be enforced. And they're concerned that once the genie's been let out of the bottle, sort of, it's hard to get it back in. And they think that a lot of people are misinterpreting this ruling as meaning that the government can't tell me to shut down my business. And that's not what they said at all. They just said that the manner in which it was done was illegal. So, our public health department definitely has that authority to do that. If that's what she chooses, and you guys, back her up on that, that she certainly has that authority, and law enforcement has the authority to enforce that. So I think they want that to be made very, very clear. They were also hoping, and from what I understand, I think you guys will have a set time and place that in a plan to present to the public, because I think they think it's going to be awfully difficult to enforce it if the public doesn't see the light at the end of the tunnel and say that, okay, we know that on whatever date you choose, then you'll be coming out with a plan. Because of course the public wants guidance. And we are encouraging that all the businesses follow the WEDC guidelines. And people should also not interpret this ruling as meaning that we just go on with life as normal, that we still need to practice the social distancing and all of that. So I think we need to get those messages out there. And I hope you guys as county board members will help get that out there and convince the public of, what is necessary to be done here. I think that we are at the point, if you look even at the governor's criteria for entering into Badger Bounce Back, we have essentially reached all of those goals. The only one of the 6 goals that he had was that the flu-like symptoms decline over a 14-day period. We were a couple of days ago, they said we had met that. It's very, very close. It's been declining, but they say it's not significant. And that's, to me, like the least important of all of those, because the COVID percentages have been going down. We have the PPP in place, or PPE, hard to get on these acronyms, and the testing in place. And part of what I know that the legislature and the governor will be talking about is making very, very sure in whatever plan we come up with that we can respond to any local outbreaks that go on, because we all have to remember that these outbreaks are going to happen. We need to swoop in, isolate them, check all the people, and deal with those, because it's inevitable. No matter how long we put this off, it's going to happen. Even the Badger Bounce Back plan, they knew that when we begin to open up, we're going to have more cases. It's just, there's nothing we can do about that. And I don't want to sound callous, because it's a terrible disease and I care about those people, but there's just nothing we can do about it. We just have to deal with it. And I know that our medical community here in Sturgeon Bay is very confident that they're going to be able to deal with whatever, comes up. So I guess I'll leave it at that. If anyone has any questions on it, I'd be happy to answer that. So,
Do you have any sense of how many local communities, counties, whatever, have already done a local extension or whatever?
yeah, obviously it's very soon right now. I know that Brown County did the one last night. Madison and Milwaukee have already said they are going to. I suspect it's going to be all over the board. I'm guessing on this, but there certainly will be others. And again, I think every community needs to look at their own situation. Door County is unique. And, I guess one of the other things I'll also bring up in saying that about Door County, law enforcement has strong feelings about, I know, the Memorial Day weekend and what happened a couple of weekends ago where we had all these people come up and nobody was ready for them. So I won't speak for them, but that's another thing to talk about as far as when we decide to let businesses, you decide to let businesses reopen. It should be a consideration. I would definitely talk to them. They have a lot of concerns. Anybody else have any questions for me?
All right, thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
David, I'm going to unmute just for the people that are in the event. I'll unmute if there's anyone else who'd like to speak.
So that way we can go out into the world and then come back and go, yeah, we have this plan. How are you doing with it? So we're going to be more concerned.
Make a room at a time.
Yeah. For us to be able to take public comment, you can't have multiple sessions running. So I'll try to unmute again if people would like to speak. If not, we'll have to move on.
Directly, but we will be more concerted in our efforts to sort of and track this. Thank you again for your patience on that. And I will, when I follow up with.
Okay.
Someone is speaking.
We'll have to move. Move on.
All right, resolutions. 2020-42, authorizing the taxation district to waive interest and penalties on property tax installment payments per 2019 Act 185.
I've got a question. This is Supervisor Boltman, the Peninsula Room.
Go ahead.
I just want some clarification. I was trying to respond. I wanted to respond to Representative Kitchens. So I had clicked on my request to speak. So that was one thing. And then it sounded like there was someone from the public trying to speak there. What just happened? There was a bunch of echoing and feedback. And was that someone from the public trying to speak, or what was that?
So, Bob, on the thing, so yes. Two things. When you want to speak, yes, if you get hit your want to speak, we'll try to recognize it. I guess we have to watch for that. So that was my mistake in terms of watching the screen for your chiming in. So we'll address that. In terms of the public comment, there's someone who has their mics on cycling through. So when I unmute, it just gives you the feedback. So we're not getting anything legible from the public at this point in time. So I had to, remute those individuals.
Is there anything we can do to reconcile that? I mean, this is a public meeting. The public has the right to be heard in public comment.
You do one at a time.
I can try to do it one at a time, but I'll try to unmute it again.
How do you get the line?
Right.
Which room?
Whatever room that is.
So could you not?
If they turn off their laptops, it'd be good.
Yeah, they want to speak.
So if individuals who are interested in speaking, we'll try this again. I'll try to unmute the individuals, but if you could turn off your sound, just because we're getting feedback back through the system, I will try to unmute the public so that way they can speak.
difficult, I will just make it work. So for that,
Did you see that? Did the Pledge of Allegiance without an issue, so it's somebody in there with the mic turned on.
Right.
One of those.
Supervisor Shomo, could I ask a question also? Are people able to use the raise hand feature on WebEx from the public?
For the events,
They can be.
understanding, yes. And we're trying to get that, but no one's raised. So that'd be the other option is someone that's raising their hand. If they could do that, then I will try to, I guess, pick them up and raise their hand. So. Oops, 1 second.
If Jill would like to turn off Boltman. Unless he's asking you to speak again.
Okay.
So Louise, you had your hand up to speak under public comment. Would you like to speak?
You know what? I just raised my hand to let you know it's working.
Okay. All right. So if the public is on, there is an option where you can raise your hand and then I can unmute you. So that way we don't have the feedback from the entire group. So if someone would like to raise their hand and speak, we could take public comment that way. And I have no one raising their hand, so we will proceed with the meeting. Oh, wait, well, sorry. There's someone that just came in. 1 second. Andrew?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can speak.
I just had a question. I came in a little bit late on the meeting. Has the Board of Supervisors made a decision on, or is it your decision to enforce the existing orders that the governor had?
We have not made that determination yet. That'll be discussed upcoming yet.
Okay, thank you.
Here's one more. 1 second. Kaylin, I have unmuted you. Your hand raised. Kaylin, going once, going twice.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. You're okay. Try speaking. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm having a hard time controlling the audio and the feedback. I'm a single suite owner as a stylist in the Southern Door County area, and I'm also just wondering if we have a determination of when, in fact, I can reopen my salon.
Again, we'll be discussing that when we get further down in the agenda.
Thank you.
Pam Seiler, you have the floor.
Good morning. I just have a question in relation to when Representative Kitchens mentioned following the WEDC guidelines. In those guidelines, there are numerous references to the Badger Bounce Back program and how that goes from one phase to the next. If we're supposed to be following WEDC guidelines and those Badger Bounce Back factors are no longer in place, what does that mean and how do we follow those?
That is a great question, and that is part of the discrepancy of what that action took place. So yes, those are incompatible at this point in time, and that has to be addressed by WEDC. I have no other hands raised, so we will proceed now with the meeting.
Thank you. Back to resolution 2020-42, authorizing a taxation district waive interest and penalties on property tax installment payments per 2019 Act 185.
Would you like me to discuss that first?
Please.
So again, if you're familiar, the state passed Act 185. And we try to provide as much information as possible in terms of the process. And I know Jay's here as well, and Grant is very well versed in it. So if I missed something, please feel free to step in. In short, what it allows you to do at the county is to pass a resolution to allow Act 185 to go into place. And in essence, it allows the deferment of the next payment of taxes, the second payment of taxes, from July to October 1st. The fact that the county passes it does not make it go into effect. The local municipality also has to pass a matching resolution for it to be in place. So one of the questions might be, well, what if the city of Sturgeon Bay passes it, but the town of Sturgeon Bay does not? That is the exact issue that you have, and it's going to be very hard to communicate that to residents, especially if they own multiple properties. So again, the county would have to adopt it, and then the local municipality would have to adopt it for it to be in place. And then the local municipalities that don't do it, that it's not in place. And again, there might be some confusion by the public in terms of if they own multiple properties in terms of how do they handle their tax payments. In the example I gave you, in the city of Sturgeon Bay, if they pass it, you could, again, not pay your second half tax payment until October 1st. Likewise, then if you have property in a town and you did not make your payment thinking that it was passed by the county and it was all set, actually you're collecting interest on that payment because the town did not adopt that as well. So it's one of those things from a logistical standpoint, it puts communication critical in terms of how we move forward. I know we've had comments, this is from some businesses that are interested in us, or at least the county pursuing it and allowing it available for the local community. I guess our biggest concern from the county standpoint, obviously, would be just our cash flow analysis in terms of actually adopting this or moving forward. In your packet on page 9, it gives you just a view of the counties that have adopted it or decided not to adopt it. And again, it's kind of running 50-50 in general in terms of what's being adopted across the state. And there's still more that actually are discussing it this month, trying to decide whether or not to move forward. I think the issue that I would just bring to your attention again would be on, then go to page 13, would be exactly how the county, should we pull this through, how would the county handle this? And the main issue for the county is really what they call the settlement. So what I mean by settlement is obviously when we're collecting the taxes or collecting the taxes on behalf of the municipalities that we do that for, at some point in time, we need to make our payment out to those taxing jurisdictions, the WPC, the school districts, and the local municipalities. So the question is when that actually happens in terms of the timing, should we adopt this? So in essence, what you're going to see is we put together two options for the consideration of how this could go forward. And again, the way the Act 185 was passed, it's up to the discretion of the county to determine how to handle that. So if on page 13, you look at option A, we're making the full settlement in August. In other words, what we'll do is we could enact it and other municipalities could do it, but we're still going to make our settlement on a traditional date in August. So what you have in that table, and I'll try to explain it, is the main thing that's to point out is this kind of the cash flow and then the ending balance on that. So what we did is we actually went off our cash flow analysis from last year. And in the first line, if I explain it once, then the other one will make sense. So your average cash flows, that's without the sales tax. You can see what we're getting in as far as average payments in July, August, September. Likewise, you have your average cash flows out that we're making on a monthly basis during that period of time. Then what you'll see on your then line below, you're looking at the tax settlement payment. That'd be in August, would be the traditional date. And you'll see then, obviously, for that operating cash flow, we end up in August with that negative cash flow of about $23 million. So in this case, you're looking at trying to, I guess, fund that gap. So what we do is we actually take money out of our LGIP. We transfer $17 million in essence to cover us, in essence, for the month until September, when we expect to see most of those payments coming in. We place it in September. Someone might say, well, do we actually see that on October 1st, that they're actually going to make the payment on October 1st? So that $16,287,000 could be in September or in October as far as the cash flow. But in essence, what we do is we pay ourselves for the cash flow standpoint for that month and a half. And then once we get those tax payments back in, we'll transfer the money from LGIP back into, or from the cash going back into LGIP. So that would show you the option if we did the full settlement in August. The second option then would be if you did the way the statute or the way the law is written, is that what you have to do is that any of the payments that are made, you still have to settle what they call a partial payment in August, but then you actually can hold the money until you get the money then in October. And that's what would show you the second option. So you're seeing the same cash flow numbers in the first two lines. But then what you're seeing is that we're not dispersing that much money. We're actually only dispersing approximately $3.1 million in August. And then we'll disperse, I guess, this is the one case where the settlement still has to be made in September. So we still got to pay approximately $17 million in September as far as cash flow. And then we still would take about $4 million out of the LGIP just to make us, I guess, cash flow on our balances. So the main difference between those two is, again, this in terms of our liquidity, in terms of the cash in hand in our accounts to cover that period of time. So in terms of which option should you guys pursue to do it, I guess my recommendation would be either to not adopt it at all. In other words, we don't pursue this, or if we do it, we actually do option A. And I know option A, we need to take, I guess, additional funds out of our LGIP. But I guess our main concern is being able to track these payments. If you can imagine, this legislation impacts our tax collection software, which we actually have two current versions running. But in essence, in talking with the vendors, there's two primary vendors in the state. One's called Transcendent, the other one's called, I got the acronym, GCS. But in both of those, the vendors are scrambling to try to figure out a way to actually be able to program this to make sure that we don't charge interest improperly to all these accounts. So from our standpoint, just from a logistical standpoint, not knowing whether or not the vendor could actually have software that's available, tested, and reliable, for us to be able to track, I guess option B would be a logistical nightmare for the treasurer's office and even the finance department to make sure that we're tracking the interest and making those payments right. So I guess our recommendation again would be, again, either we do not pursue it at all, or if we do pursue it, we pursue it with the understanding that we will make our full settlement in August, would be the recommendation from a financial standpoint. I know, Grant, if you want to add anything else that I missed in terms of the program or anything else that would be worthwhile.
No, I think the explanation was complete. If anybody has any questions, I can attempt to answer them.
Okay, we have a number of people that would like to speak.
Yeah, can you date your cards when you go through?
So the first one up would be Joel.
You have the floor, Joel. I have him muted. 1 second. Joel, it shows you that you're not connected, so we'll come back to you. You're going to try to reconnect, or we're not seeing you in the conference room. So, David, you want to go to the next one? We'll come back to Joel.
Next would be Dave Anago.
Okay. First of all, can we walk through the intended way we're going to work with this roll call here? Because I see we have a motion and a second. And I know yesterday there was a discussion of how we might run this. And are we changing that, or can we get a concept of how we intend to do this in the next couple?
So just to make this clear, what we're trying to do is anything that's going to happen would be, if you wish to speak, then David would recognize you. And then if you want to make a motion on the resolution on the floor, then that's when you hit the motion. So for right now, if it's okay with David, I'd actually have Jill turn off the motion part of it.
I can't turn it. Is
until we get to that part.
It's gone to amend now.
Right.
It's gone right now because there's a motion and a second.
Okay.
Right.
So the intent was what you guys were talking about yesterday was that we hold off pressing that button, and then you would request to speak, and then when the chair would call you to speak, at that time you can make your comments, make your motion, and then press the button. Correct? Just to kind of keep a pattern that makes sense.
No, it's a learning curve.
Okay. Because historically we like to make the actual motion rather than there being motions been written.
Can they withdraw?
Yeah, why don't we ask? Are you?
I don't know. We need to worry about that.
Okay.
Because the person that makes motion is next in line to talk anyways. It's on page 4 of the packet, number 5, second line entry, line 12. it states authorized, comma, but not required. What does that mean? Oh, the motion in the second was just removed. Okay.
We're gonna try to do it right.
Okay.
So what does the not but not required mean? I kept reading that sentence and I couldn't quite figure out the intent of it.
What? I'm sorry.
Page 4, item number 5, which is line 12.
Well, reading.
Yes, go ahead.
Basically, what that means is that the county treasurer is authorized, but doesn't have to omit from the tax certificate delivered to the county or on September 1, 2020, the parcels for which a taxation district has waived interest and penalties as provided in this resolution. So, and I think the intent of that is to address an issue that the waivers until October. The tax certificates are due to be issued on September 1, and you can imagine the confusion that might result if you have a waiver and all of a sudden you get
Remind me what a tax certificate is.
Tax certificate is something that's issued when a tax payment is deemed delinquent.
Okay.
And what the legislature did not provide for in the legislation was a situation where on September 1, 2020, the payment was delinquent, but it was delinquent because it had been waived. And we want to avoid a situation where Grant gets a waiver, but he gets a tax certificate, and we have 1,200 people calling the treasurer's office.
So that line item addresses a statutory obligation that already exists and makes allowances for the fact that we're allowing for a different payment date. This gives him that authority to work within that world.
A different notice date, and there is actually authority in the statute that would allow him, the treasurer, to delay the notice for up to 90 days. And what we're envisioning here is just delaying the notice on the properties where a waiver has been granted from September 1st to October 1st. If the October 1st payment is not waived, is not made timely, then the properties would be included in the tax certificate.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now I understand it's to work within the statutory obligations anyways.
And avoid confusion. Yes.
Right. Okay. As a general, this is not, okay. So first thing is I want to make sure is you said matching resolution the municipality has to make. If I read this correctly, they basically have to pass the identical resolution.
A mirror.
Right. So they should be going to some central place, presumably the state, to get the verbiage, or do we supply them with a copy so that they don't go out and make their own resolution and so forth?
I would imagine that we're going to provide each municipality a copy of our resolution. Our resolution is a boilerplate that has been prepared by the Wisconsin Counties Association. And I would presume that the League of Municipalities, the Wisconsin Towns Association, there will be a boilerplate available. If not, each municipality can model their resolution after ours and just insert the village or the town or the city where ours says county.
Okay. Any municipalities that may already be looking at this as a moot point if we don't pass something today.
Correct.
But nobody's obligated to do it if we do pass something today.
Correct.
I'm a retired town board member. I know a lot of municipalities are really tight on their budgets and they kind of expect monies to show up in August, their dispersal to occur. So if we choose to do this, our pockets at the moment, we have enough money in order to not put ourselves into jeopardy to do this. 17 million.
Correct.
And eventually it's really just a holdover. It's like we've done in the past, a loan to ourselves to pay a due to bill that eventually towards the end of the year, in theory, we should be made whole.
That's correct.
And I could see the logistics being no fun, trying to track everything. So my choice would be, if we chose to do this, is option A, in part because I know many municipalities are barely working within a budgetary concept they have now, and do expect those money to show up for them and move forward.
Okay, Mr. Fisher.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion. We adopt resolution 2020-42, pick the best option, which according to the administrator is A. I would comment though that in looking at pages 9 and 10, only 4 other counties have done it. 15 have said no. But I'm still in favor of doing this, even though that number is there. I have a question though on page 12. The ordinance from 1983. I see there's an Austin on there. Dan, would that be your father?
Grandfather.
By the way, that's Dan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have to add.
Ken, if you're going to make that a motion now, I need you to hit the motion button again.
Oh, I just hit it.
All right, thank you.
And now we need a second. Okay, we do have a second. And now, David, you can run
Okay.
your speaker.
All right, this will go to Nissa.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, it's Kara. Kara. Okay.
So I'm also in favor of this. I look at it this way. I know a lot of families right now and are not working, don't have a lot of money coming in. Unemployment is only so much. The CARES helps. And that being said, eventually that runs out and they may not have, and a lot of people I know, at least in the restaurant industry, may not have a job to go back to. Same with retail. When it comes to this, if it gives people a couple more months to be able to just in general feed their families and not stress about one extra thing, I think that I can only see that as a positive. To the point where people are checking their bank accounts every day, panicking if they can keep their lights on every time they order or go to the grocery store, if they can get enough food for the week. There's a lot of people with a lot of, current added stress. And if we can do one thing that can alleviate some of that, I think that's a positive. I hope that we do pass it. And I hope that the that the municipalities also pass it to keep people feeling a little bit safer and secure right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nissa. Joel?
Can you hear me this time?
Yes, you can.
Okay, good. I was just wanting to echo as the first question before was, I think it's been kind of discussed here from Dave and Nissa, but to reiterate for my edification on this, what this is actually talking about then is the county making the municipalities that fall under county tax collection whole at their time of payments to the municipalities, and the county kind of absorbing the burden until everybody catches up as a whole, right? In a nutshell, that's what it boils down to.
Yes, you probably said it shorter than I did. So.
Well, that's what I wanted to do initially. So that's good. I coming from many years of a municipal background up here. Also, Dave is spot on his comments as far as town's concerns. Very tight budgets, and I think this is the security that local municipalities will need to keep the frontline people going that they feel, through the season here, no matter what happens. But and the proverbial fact that the county is the 700-pound gorilla that we always are. This is our time to be the silverback of the group and keep everybody happy.
Okay. Megan?
Go ahead, sorry.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to weigh in that I would say half of the correspondence that I have received from the public over the last few weeks has been directly in regards to the question of what is the county going to do about property taxes? Is there anything that can be done? And this is a major concern that's out there. So just echoing that, I do fully support this. And I think that the way that we're going about it is responsible and definitely the right thing to do as county government.
Okay, thank you. Kara?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I was looking up articles about other counties that had adopted it, and it said that the waiver should prompt landlords to offer more leniency to tenants struggling, but I don't feel like anything ever trickles down, and I'm also wondering how many people this will reach. In the same article, it talked about how 2/3 of property tax bills in that county were paid by mortgage companies, and that the cash flow would impact school districts. So I was wondering if this was helping a good amount of people. I guess I just have more questions about how many people it might affect.
So I know, Jay, you're in the, Jay can give you a little bit of idea, but the $20 million that we have in a tax settlement is a representation of what I guess I consider still owed in terms of property taxes.
Yes, that's correct.
Off to the map, you could give an idea. I don't give the actual parcel count that would help provide some of that information, Jay.
Well, about 1/3 of the people pay their taxes in full, usually in December. And then a lot of them pay in half in January. So far, about 2/3 of the taxes have been collected. I have an update on what counties have passed it. There's 4 counties that have passed this resolution, and there's 31 that have said no. In our area, Kewanee has said no. Calumet, Oconto have all said no. Brown County is considering it, but they've had 2 committees that have not taken any action. It will come to their county board next week. Anyway, that's where we are right now. So it's about 1/3 of the money that's out there. About 30% of the money that's out there will go to the municipalities.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, there might be people on the county board that are unaware that nearly half of the taxes that are collected in Door County are from people that don't live here. These are people that have a second home up here, most of them, and we really don't know their situation. So I'm not so sure that we should waive interest and penalties because half the people don't even live here. They're from other parts of the country. And I would think that in most cases they don't vote here, but they pay taxes here probably on their second home. So I'm not so sure that we should support waiving penalties and interest on this resolution. Thank you.
Susan?
Hi, I have actually 2 things. One is a question, which is, we would take this from the LGIP rather than, for example, the undesignated fund balance. Is that an option for us as well?
Again, just from the financial side of where the cash is sitting, that 17 million is part of our whole portfolio. Undesignated fund is not just sitting in a bank account. It's actually sitting in all those accounts, LGIP. So we're actually drawing down those funds. So it's just a mixture of all of our investments. But the LGIP money is the most liquid, and that's what Steve would recommend. If we have to support this, that's where he'd take those funds from.
Okay. And I certainly would like to say that I support this. I think perhaps there are people that this isn't necessary for, but I certainly think it is necessary for some of our businesses and some of our residents. So and it's something that we will be made whole. I think this is something we need to do.
Okay. David, Inigo?
Supervisor, one of the things I wrestled with on this is the same thing that Supervisor Burley said. We are unique as a county, goes for 2 things. One of them is sheer number of parcels of land that are not resided on inside the county, people that are not physically here working. But the other part, looking over that list of counties that said no to it, something you have to remember, we're also a fairly lucky county to have a fairly decent reserve of money. We're quite lucky to have had a group of individuals through the years pay attention to that. Some of those counties looking at the list that said no, I'm pretty certain the reason they said no is because they weren't in that position. They don't have that reserve of money sitting back there to do these options in the first place. So I'm not enthusiastic about basically subsidizing 3rd, 2nd, 4th home tax payments, but ultimately everything work out correctly by the end of the year. Everything should be paid off. There should be nobody. The only people that would not be paying off, the only people who would be paying interest are those people that seriously couldn't deal with it in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Vinny?
I agree that we should pass this. I feel that there will always be situations where people will, excuse me, where people will be able to misuse the system, but this is created to help people who are in need of having this work for them. So I think that should be our focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? David Engelbert?
Yes, I've talked to a number of my constituents down in the Southern Door, and including bankers and business owners, and there is a real lot of support for this. As far as those with the mortgages and so forth, at least 50%, at least the banker I talked to, say money's in escrow, it's there for them to pay their taxes. At this time, there's also still business loans available that haven't been provided, or the money hasn't been used by some of the business owners. And they all seem to raise a question on October 1st or whatever the new deadline is for paying property taxes. Are things going to be better than they are today? And what happens if they aren't better and money isn't coming in to the county? How are we going to restore that money to us if it hasn't come in at that time? I guess I'm not in support of this resolution. At least not by what my constituents are telling.
Anybody else? I will add my own personal comment is I am in favor of this, and I'm in favor of this because we have a lot of businesses that have not been in business, and they're just hoping that they get some business during the summer. We don't know where the state's going to go. We don't know where all these orders are going to go. But anything we can do to help our residents that are not working and may only have limited part-time work through the summer, and well as our businesses, particularly on the tourist-related side up north, I think anything we can do to help them out for a couple of months is in our best interest long-term. So no other comments or requests to speak. We will vote.
Cheater vote out. Yes. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna cheat and I don't think I'm good. Well, only if the last one comes. Let's not get excited. Now, can you see it, Jim?
I can see it down here. Okay. So that is passed on a vote of 17 yes, 4 nay. Thank you. Next resolution, 2020-43, ratification of orders of County Board Chair and County Administrator for Resolution 2020-19. Turn it over to Ken.
Okay, so what's before you is kind of our standard resolution that we have in terms of action that we have taken since our last meeting. If you go, I guess, starting on line 14, I can just summarize what we have done. So the first one was our policy, which is attached. Also has the implementation furlough positions that were effective starting April 27th through May 24th. Along with that is the attachment that it was everything that we did was for the positions that did qualify were enrolled in a work share program, which I can explain. We have the information there, but I'll just give you a brief explanation. In essence, there is what's called a work share program in the plan beforehand that allows us to actually specify those employees that are, I guess, being furloughed. Under the program, I use the word furlough versus layoff. Under the furlough, they still maintain all their employee benefits and accruals, but they are, in essence, also that they can apply for unemployment. But also when they apply for the unemployment, they do not have to do the traditional applying for other jobs and that type of thing, because under the program for the work share, it is intended that those employees will be returning back to county employment. So for of those positions, we actually did apply for that, and we actually had 2 approvals for those from the work share program to do that. So for employees that were, I guess, placed on furlough, they would qualify for their traditional unemployment. And they also qualify for the federal stimulus, which was $600 a week. The last item then is also just a FYI, well, not FYI, but we did get a donation of $500 from Federal that we accepted. Again, it would normally have gone through the committee, but we just put that down that was accepted. So those are the items that are part of that resolution. I don't know, Grant, did we want to also discuss an amendment in terms of ratifying that we're still under emergency?
Yes.
Or something like that, maybe Grant just wants to say one thing.
Yeah, with respect to the recent event with the Wisconsin Supreme Court decision, what I'm suggesting is that we add a paragraph after line. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Board of Supervisors reaffirms that emergency conditions, specifically a public health emergency, continues to exist. And that's period. The reason for that is that our initial declaration of emergency is grounded in section 323.11 and 323.02 sub 16 of the statutes. And while it's not at all reliant on the safer at home, it does require that there be an ongoing emergency condition for it to persist. And while I think that's certainly the case, kind of taking a belt and suspenders approach, having the county board reaffirm that gives us an extra layer of protection to ensure that the declaration continues in place.
Okay. Thank you. Dave Anago?
So then in that respect, do we need a motion to add that to the verbiage? And you've got pre-written verbiage to that effect that will work for us?
Yes.
Okay. The question I had was not related to that. That's obviously for a request. Can we get a list of, I understand the various reasons, I don't want employees listed, but I'd like a list of the departments and the percentage or some kind of sample example, knowledge of who was furloughed, what quantities were furloughed, percentages, layoffs, or something like that, some kind of a report to that effect.
Sure, we did, just for reference, we had 59 employees. We had 59 employees that were placed into furlough status. I think 23 were considered permanent furlough, which means they would not apply for the work share. The other percentages were 22 hours of work. And those individuals that are put into 20 to 32 hours were enrolled in the work share program.
I'm kind of more interested in seeing how the individual departments were affected. So like Sheriff's Department, we had 3 people that volunteered or whatever, went on the furlough or something, just so we can see how the departments themselves were affected, not just the county way. 350 plus employees, that's kind of a vague number to see.
Sure, I can provide a summary of that.
Yeah, just a simple email to that effect would be great. Yeah. Other than that, then I'd make a motion to amend the resolution as per council.
Or you can just make a motion to adopt as what the amendment suggested, because there's no motion on the floor yet.
Okay. Right. Then I make a motion to adopt the resolution as presented with the addition of the co-council statements.
Okay. And that was seconded by Peter. Right. Next would be Laura.
Yeah, thanks. Do I press cancel then?
No.
I'll push you. So with that amendment to this resolution, does that give the authority, this question I guess would be for Grant, does that give the authority to our chairman and our county administrator to decide to close businesses or open them?
In brief, no, that authority rests with the local health officer, and we're going to discuss that later on in the agenda. What it does, though, is, as I said, kind of take a belt and suspenders approach and ensures that our initial declaration of emergency persists, and that's important for many reasons, not the least of which is to continue to make us eligible for federal and state aid.
Okay. And then one more question to follow up on that. Since we're adding that to them, is there a timeline that we need to reinstate that or make new resolutions of that? Is there days of order that it's active? Or?
That's going to be discussed next.
Oh, okay.
Next item. Todd.
Yeah, I don't know, are we off mute?
We can hear you.
We can hear you. Now we can.
Please turn yourselves off. 1 second.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Todd.
Okay, I think we're back on.
There you go.
All right, so I don't, my question may have been answered, but in regard to the addition to the resolution given authority, is that time bound? I didn't hear, or is this for another month, another 6 weeks, or is there any time binding to that addition to the resolution?
I'll answer. No, under section 323.11 of the statutes, what it provides is that the declaration of emergency will continue as long as the emergency conditions, in this case, the public health emergency, continues to exist. So it's tied to the public health emergency, not any specific date or time.
And how is the public health emergency's existence defined? I guess I'm just a little, I thought, last time when we passed this, it was obviously defined by the stay-at-home order that the governor had put out there, and now there doesn't seem to be really any end to that, because I'm not sure quite who defines the end of the emergency health resolution. Is that a condition? Is that a state statement, or how does that become reality?
Yes, that would also be determined in Door County by the local health officer. It has not ever been tied to the safer at home. There's a definition which I'll read that's probably not particularly helpful in the statute that we rely on, 323.02 sub 16. Public health emergency means the occurrence or imminent threat of an illness or health condition that meets all of the following criteria. And then it goes through 4 criteria. And in Door County, the local health officer is the one who determines whether that criteria exists or not.
All right, Susan.
A couple of things. One, does the work share plan, is that something that was authorized through the CARES Act, that it could exist, or?
Actually, the work share program actually did exist before all this happened. So it was a program where
that we could do,
that we could have done in the past, but it's one of those things that they, in essence, loosened up even some of the rules and requirements for that made it very worthwhile for us to pursue.
The loans that, or the monies that have been authorized up till now in the 4 federal acts that they passed, is there anything in there that allows local governments to apply for the same kind of relief for paying salaries when people have to be furloughed and so on, like for businesses?
At this point in time, there's not. I can tell you that out of the federal packages, there was one package that got allocated to the states, and WCA has been lobbying the state to ask that the counties receive 30% of that allocation, but it's up to the governor in terms of how they allocate those funds and distribute those. But that's been one of the things that WCA has been advocating as part of their policy. I know Grant wanted to add something.
Yeah, it's in addition to go back to the work share program under the Fair Care Act, the county will be eligible for reimbursement up to 100% of the uninsurance that is paid to its employees. Door County is self-insured. It usually makes that entire payment itself. So in addition to the $600, whatever amount is paid through the state uninsured fund will be subject, hopefully, to reimbursement. Can't say that for sure, but it's likely.
Okay, and my final part is, can you define for me what it means with the 23 people to be permanently furloughed? Is that laying off?
No, so again, not permanent. I guess what I'm saying, they had no hours. So the main area that hit was our library, simply because there was no ability for them to work from home.
Okay.
So when they didn't have that option, we considered furlough with 0 hours of work, but they still have their benefits and they're still intending to come back to work under that scenario.
But they
we don't have anyone that's permanently laid off, or we did not do any layoffs in the organization.
But they do not get to apply for the unemployment?
They do apply for the unemployment. They also apply for, the thing is that they're not part of what's called the work share program that provides the alternative benefit of, again, us getting reimbursed for those. So for those 23 individuals, that will come out of our insurance fund for paying for those, but we will not get reimbursed for those employees.
They are eligible for the $600 a week through the, without, which doesn't come out of the county coffers.
Laura?
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify and ask a question here and actually comment. So we had Representative Kitchens spoke to us earlier saying that the state, from Governor Evers' criteria, we had met all but one of those criteria. And I do believe there's 6 of that criteria. And my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that was that criteria to state as if it was a public emergency or not, and we were going through different phases.
Wait,
With that being said,
can I ask that the public Laura,
health officer?
I just want to correct something. That metric system was set up to determine when you moved into phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3 of the bounce back plan.
Okay.
That's all. Okay.
So can we hear then, so with that criteria being in better standing, can we hear from our public health officer as this person would define what a public emergency is present to this day and how she would report on this since there's an amendment or an adjustment to this resolution?
Yeah, so I know Dan's driving the room. If Dan's still there, could you unmute it and have Sue speak?
Here's Sue. Good morning. There was a lot of noise on my part in my room here. Please tell me the question.
So the question would be, how do you define a public emergency, and do you believe it's still present today?
I believe it's still present today, but Laura, I'd have to reference something to know exactly how that's defined, and I don't have that in front of me. I can tell you that state statute gives broad powers to your local health officer in regards to prevention and suppression and control of communicable disease. And I take that very seriously. So I guess that's not helping much about the definition.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, anybody else? All right, we will move to a vote. We have a motion and a second.
You get to see how you voted as well. The things that make us happy.
Then you know whether you want to change it. David Engelbert?
It's something over in this corner. It's going to come up. Electronic.
Just to vote on the amendment or on the?
No.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 nay. Thank you. Item number 9, COVID-19 updates. Public health. Go ahead.
So why don't we, since both Dan and Sue are right there, why don't you guys provide your updates, please?
All right, Dan Kane here. I'll start, Emergency Management Director. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, a lot of the things that I was going to touch on today, some of which no longer exist. So I'm going to keep my comments fairly short today. Just want to give you a perspective from an operational standpoint, how emergency management in the county is supporting public health in this COVID world. A few things we're working on. Number one is community testing sites. You've heard a lot about this around the state. Those things are popping up. Quite often you're seeing things about free sites, antibody testing sites. You're hearing a lot about these testing sites. Door County is looking into the possibility of operating one of these sites and working with the state on that. I don't want to get into the details necessarily. It's more than you probably care to know, but essentially we're looking at that to help identify where COVID is in the community here. And we think those sites can help bridge that gap and help identify that. The other thing is PPE. Our task force is up and running with PPE. So we do have a task force dedicated to that to help get our first responders and our medical partners and those on the front lines the emergency supplies they might need should they need them. So we have a task force up and running with that. They also help us with anything that comes in with donations and as far as PPE is concerned. Recovery, we have a recovery task force that is stood up, and that group is currently working on our messaging for both county residents and tourists, and visitors, and businesses on different ways that we can both physically and psychologically remain safe and ensure that all of the correct practices, best practices are implemented and followed. So we're working through different things with that. We will hopefully be having some new guidance on masking and infographics coming out on different things with that group. So stay tuned to that. Our Destination Door County, Wisconsin Economic Development, or I'm sorry, the Destination, listen to me, the Door County Economic Development Corporation and the hospital are great partners with that, amongst other folks. So we do have a group working on that. And the only other thing I'll mention is we've touched on it a little bit with the emergency declaration. Yes, that does help us, essentially opens the doors for public assistance through FEMA. That is a big part of what I'm working with finance on right now, to make sure that all of our eligible expenses are tracked. And that emergency declaration is the first piece to that wheel that allows us to essentially apply for that funding. So we're currently tracking that. Steve, do you want to give me the number? Does it not matter? Okay. Yeah, so we're working on tracking all those costs. The cost share will break down as follows. 75% of it is federally reimbursed. 12.5% comes from the state, and the other 12.5% of all eligible expenses are borne by the county. So that's about all I have. I'll turn it over to Sue.
Good morning, everybody. Sue Powers, Health Officer, Public Health Manager. I'll begin with adding on to Dan described well some of the things we're trying to plan for safe reopening in our community and plan continuing response to the COVID pandemic. This week has been an especially busy one, the busiest since the onset of all of this, because while we're faced with that, with the now sudden end of Safer at Home, thought it was going to be extended, but even then we were under the gun planning. We're also faced with more cases in Door County, and I'm sure you've heard that the 2 restaurants closed regarding COVID infections in their employees. So this morning we have 6 new cases. I told some of you earlier it was 7 new cases, but 6 is the correct number. So we're up to a total of 29 confirmed cases in Door County residents. Of those 29, 9 have recovered, and we've got 3 deaths. Currently, no one is hospitalized for COVID. We've had 516 negative tests, and as of this morning, there's 110 pending. This week, with the outbreaks at the restaurant, Door County Medical Center really helped this community and stepped up their capacity to test. We have stretched them considerably. And as Dan said, we're looking at the possibility of community testing sites with help from the state. That's just a stopgap. We need to increase our sustainable capacity. So we're working on some strategies around that. We're also aware that the nursing homes are going to have all their residents and staff tested. That's part of a state initiative in collaboration somewhat with public health. We were given the option as to how much we wanted to be involved. And of course, we don't have capacity to be very involved. We will follow up on any confirmed cases and do contact tracing. So we are stretched, as I said, also working on getting some LTE help. That's in process. Some of the social workers that we've got helping us with contact tracing are becoming more busy with their regular jobs. So we need to put a more sustainable plan in place. And as I said, we're working on that. As far as the Safer at Home end of that, with the Supreme Court overturning, we are working on a health order this morning to continue to mirror the Safer at Home and continue those guidelines and requirements for a limited amount of time, at least 6 days. Still in conversation about that. And in 40 minutes, I have a regional health officer meeting, and it would be really great if, as a region, we had some consistency. I'm not sure if that's going to be able to occur. But as I said earlier, state statute gives broad powers to your local health officer in regard to communicable disease. And I'm very concerned about the health and well-being of our community and take those responsibilities seriously and intend to give a very thoughtful and thorough evaluation of all the aspects to this. I'm well aware that it's beneficial for our community to have businesses be able to reopen, at least in some fashion, as soon as possible. Need to balance that with the spread of disease, somehow. Social, physical distancing, of course, is the only tool we have to combat this. And COVID doesn't care about politics or state or county lines. So I'll end with thank you for your continued support for the health and well-being of our community.
Thank you, Sue.
And I'm not sure if Grant, you have anything to add, or Ken, about the health order that's coming out?
Maybe just briefly, the interim order that Sue referenced is really to bridge the gap between the sudden demise of Safer at Home and another order that will be entered that I think will mirror after Badger bounce back. It will be in effect after the interim order expires. I think the concern is that if we don't do an interim order, that we would be flying without any regulations in place. And if we learned anything through this process is that what people are looking for is some clarity and certainty. And I think the interim order will give that to us for at least 6 days. So.
Thank you, Sue. We have a couple of questions. Alexis?
Hi, thank you, Chairman. I have a question and I just have a question, I guess. So Dan, the testing sites that you mentioned, are those with the state, are those going to be symptomatic, asymptomatic, antibody testing, the whole gamut, or is it again, are we focusing testing on just those that are presenting with symptoms? Thank you.
Yeah, the testing site referring to would only be for symptomatic individuals at this time, but those symptoms are very wide ranging and you'll see across the state, includes everything up to a headache. So some have been more lax on essentially what they constitute a symptom, but generally speaking, you have to at least have one symptom to participate.
I'll just add to that. In conversing with the state earlier this week about that question, they did say if there's groups that public health feel need testing, that they would be open to that also. And under consideration then are the staff of assisted living facilities, because they don't fall into that nursing home category that the state initiative is working on. And we've had some requests from those businesses to get their staff tested. We're also concerned that maybe, we'd like to repeat a community testing site a week or two after the initial one to really get some more data and to follow up.
That would come with the ultimate goal of kind of, and Sue said, bridging the gap is trying to find what local resources we can do to continue that level of testing. If we are going to have our own separate set of numbers from Badger bounce back from the state level, we need to make sure that we're testing appropriately locally. So.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Sue. I just have a couple questions for you. You said that this morning that you're going to be coming up with a new order or to bridge what was the governor's?
Correct.
Okay, and then you're having a regional meeting yet this morning too?
Correct.
Will your order come after your regional meeting?
Yeah, we hope to have it done early this afternoon, Laura.
Okay. And then also, there's been questions floating around on if somebody is going in or if there's a verification that businesses are doing what applying to these guidelines. Is there any type of talk that way that you're seeing with public health?
You mean
if that businesses assuring businesses are implementing the guidelines that are being suggested between like National Restaurant Association, CDC, and other ones that have been put out?
So DATCAP has their own guidelines, and they do the restaurant and hotel inspections. Past that, I don't know if you're talking about like anyone inspecting or actually assuring that they're following it. There is not a plan, to do exactly that. Although, as Dan talked about earlier, we're working with the hospital and the business community to put out messaging and try to get some uniformity across the businesses. And Pam Seiler asked a really good question about the WEDC guidelines, and now that the Badger Bounce Back is no longer, how are the guidelines gonna work? What should the businesses follow? And we'll need to help them with that in some fashion.
And that's something that our county, we could implement or do the Badger Bounce Back. But also you talked about that there was an outbreak with a restaurant. Could you elaborate, but keep that confidential? You don't have to say names, but could you talk about that a little bit more? Was there all the cases that came out of that?
Sure. So there were 2 restaurants that closed voluntarily, and it's no secret because they put out messaging. It was Culver's and McDonald's on Egg Harbor Road. And each of them have some cases, and testing is not complete. It's pending on whether there are more cases than the initial. So that's really, I'm not going to give numbers on each facility because it's probably going to change, and I don't know that that would help anybody, and it would single out those businesses.
So in essence, those numbers haven't been determined yet because you're still waiting on testings to get back?
Right.
Okay. And then the other, you had made a comment, and I appreciate that, being very respectful and considerate to the community's health and well-being, and also acknowledging businesses wanting to open. So with that being said, do you see that your order may have some gentle or guidelines to help with businesses? Or, we've been hearing a lot about salons wanting to go appointment by appointment. Do you see any of that in the works?
At this point, my plan is to just mirror what the state was doing with Safer at Home and continue it as they were before the Supreme Court overturned it. But it will be an interim, a limited amount of days.
So Sue, this is Dave. So what was talked about earlier when you're putting this order together was we were probably going to set a date of approximately the 20th of May for the next 6 days. And then you would take a look during that next 6 days, you would evaluate going through whether we are looking towards a bounce back plan, phase 1, et cetera, based on what we're getting from the rest of the state and your compatriots.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Dave, for summing that up.
Yeah, that's all I had. It goes to the same what it was the plan from last week with the Supreme Court. They were going to give a 6 day window to get a plan in place, right?
Yes.
I do have a question with bars having opened across the state and restaurants. I know of at least one case where a bar opened last night in the county. It wasn't where I work, so nobody call them and yell at them, please. What is the plan for the bars and restaurants if we're continuing to stay at home, which I'm fine with? What is the plan for recourse on bars and restaurants that are opening against the plan because the Tavern League has told everyone to open?
Grant, would you care to address that?
Once the interim order is in place, we will do appropriate enforcement. By that, I mean, we are on a complaint-driven system. We need to get a complaint. If we received a complaint about a particular bar, that complaint would be investigated. If the complaint was substantiated, the bar owner would be given a warning and a reasonable opportunity to comply. And depending on what happened from there, there could be enforcement, or what we hope happens is that the tavern comes into compliance. And again, what we're trying to do is just bridge the gap between today and when the next order will be in place, and to make sure that, again, there's certainty for people, they understand what the rules are and what they need to do over the next 6-day period.
Vinny.
Thank you. Sue, I was wondering if there is a goal in mind for a number of tests, we've heard different things from federal and state government about number of tests to be completed to kind of have an idea of what the impact on your community is. Do we have any sense of that for Door County, which is equally challenging for residents currently, but also for if we were to look at the typical number of increased population we have in the summer months? Are we having some kind of a goal like that for number of tests we're hoping to do?
Good question, Vinny. The state developed a sort of a metric system by population of county, and the goal for Door County is, according to them, 400 a week, and we have not gotten near that. Maybe we'll get to half of that this week. So that's a lofty goal. Dan, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would just say this to Sue's point. Again, that those numbers, right, we're all, I guess, hinging upon the state's efforts to test more. We hear more from the state about testing. Testing is the key. And that was all based on Badger bounce back criteria. That's where the testing was really driven to see how we could get those gating criteria met. Without Badger bounce back in place, that 400 number essentially goes away from what I guess our goal would be to, I guess, contribute our little piece of the pie to the overall state testing response. What that looks like, what that new number may look like in terms of what Door County's testing number should be to, I guess, mirror what the state was doing. We don't know yet, but that hopefully we can iron out all the details of what our new quote unquote Badger bounce back locally looks like. Hopefully we can get that ironed out in the interim in the next couple of days and weeks.
Thank you. The second part of my question had to do with, and I realize this is so new for everyone. Are you seeing anything across the state or across the nation where people are specifically looking at best practices for tourist destinations? It seems like many of the things I've read talk about local community populations and local events from residents. I'm just looking to our unique economy that is so tourist driven and finding some ways to appropriate this for that. Thank you.
So that's another good question, Vinny. I can tell you that what I have read indicates that large gatherings can, as the CDC puts it, super spread COVID. I read a study yesterday in the state of Washington where there was a gathering, and I'm not looking at it and I can't remember, but a majority of the people were infected with COVID from one person in a large gathering. So that's why they call it a super spread. And that's unfortunate for our tourist community and events. Yeah, we've been looking to the state for guidance on all these things. And we were very pleased that last week they came out with guidance for graduation ceremonies. In there, they did make a statement about basically that it looks like large gatherings are not going to be advisable all summer. But you know, it was rather vague statement, but that's what they indicated from their study and determination.
Thank you. And that's kind of what I was wondering is, you know, beyond the large gatherings, which I do feel hopefully people are understanding why that could be a super spread situation. I guess I'm just looking to, as we work through this, be able to provide some guidance for business and for people traveling here to maybe ease the message up of not, to still be able to travel here, but that may look different than times you've done it before. I know that the 4th of July celebrations have been canceled already here. So I think that that's showing people understand large gatherings, but also wanting to promote our economy and our businesses being able to continue in a safe way. So the message isn't eventually just don't come here. It's come here, but this is how it would look. That's the kind of messaging I hope we can take advantage of by having local kind of control of how this goes. Thank you.
Thanks for your thoughts on that, Vinny.
Yeah, and this is Dan, just to bounce off that real quickly. That is the kind of conversations that we're having with that recovery task force group is how do we, with our partners in Destination Door County and the visitor bureaus, how do we get that message out to the tourists to say, we want to welcome you back when it's safe and know that we're doing everything right and that the businesses are doing everything right. They're pledging to do everything right. Because it sounds like from what we're hearing from all the businesses, they want to do things right. They just want to know how to do them. And so we want to get them that information and then also get it to our tourists to say, hey, we, our businesses have taken this pledge, our communities have taken this pledge, and it's safe to come here when it is safe. So that's the kind of conversations we're having at that recovery meeting.
Thank you.
Laura?
Just to add one other thing to that. I think the clear messaging that we're trying to do the best at, and what Sue and Dan has been doing is also, and I've been seeing and hearing this and messaging that's happening, is that just because we're looking at opening up businesses, say in the next week, or more guideline coming from the state, doesn't necessarily mean the county is wide open. So that's part of that staging open, and I think that's important with that messaging going forward, that slowly but surely opening up businesses, not necessarily welcoming all the tourists. Thank you.
David, Inigo?
This is more of a comment. I don't believe that Dan or Sue can do anything about this, but maybe I'd like to get it out there anyways. As most of you know, my job is considered essential as a building inspector, and I leave this county majority of the days of the week. I'm 57, and over the last 2 weeks, I've seen in the morning going to Door County and in the evening coming back into Door County a remarkable increase in speed on that highway. I'm talking people that are 5 miles an hour plus over my speed and veering in and out of traffic. And this is 57. It's bad enough in the first place with some of these people, but with the lack of traffic, you don't need to be tailgating to get 10 miles over my speed limit. And there's 2 lanes, and you really don't need to, if you're that late, plan ahead. You don't need to be doing 80 miles an hour on that road. This is a side effect that I was not happy seeing either.
Well, you have to also agree, I think, Grant, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but with the safer order struck down, that also eliminates the essential travel restrictions, et cetera. That's all gone.
Well, that was before all of that happened yesterday. So
yep.
We're building up. Are on the road are actually more rude than they normally are.
Okay, Joel.
I was muted there.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and personally thank Sue and Dan for everything they've done here. I know it's been tremendous headache and heartburn, I'm sure, for everybody and the entire county staff. Sitting here listening to all this, I've just wanted to give my weigh in 2 cents from up north, obviously from the island in Northern Door County. And, I can't say anything that nobody already doesn't know or hasn't heard, good, bad, and different impacts, the virus, social activities, businesses, everything. And the one thing that I keep going back to me in my mind was, and all of us were on, we've been on many calls and meetings and whatnot, Zooming and everything in the last several weeks on everything. And the one thing that I hear constantly from people, and it's not a lot up here because it's a mixed bag up here on stuff, but at the end of the day, I think at least I get the impression from everybody in the county as well as up here that we know this is going to be a long thing to battle out and fight, and it's part of our lives now. But at the end of the day, at some point in time, we all have to just trust and let the individual businesses and people figure this out ourselves and do what we think is right as owners, because at the end of the day, nobody wants it. Business owners don't want it. We don't want to, owe the banks our lives at the end of the day. Things got to happen. And I think, again, the consensus from the conversations that I've had with people up and down the peninsula and meetings and conversations and chats is that, a soft opening, something to the effect, has to happen sooner than later. And we all will follow the rules and guidelines that's set in place. But to stay completely locked up or shut down anymore it's killing everybody, as we all know. I mean, I can't say anything that we don't know, but to let the best practices of the people that own the businesses and the interactions part, I think those people know what they need to do, because you're seeing it. I see it on the ferry. I see it from people that are coming up here still. We're being cognizant and telling people what's here right now. It's basically nothing is open, just like the peninsula, but there is still natural scenic beauty that they can see from inside their cars going around. But making people aware of what's going on is, not a bad thing. But we have to keep the mindset too that, we need this summer season coming up and availability to make some money. But I think people, again, just my final say is that people know what's going on, obviously, and know what best practices we need to do as business owners. And I think we have to trust them at some point with the final steps on what's going on, because it's going to be here a while. We know that. But again, I want to thank you guys for everything you've done, because it's heartburn. We know it. And Sue and Dan and Ken and Dave and everybody, kudos to everybody. Hats off.
Thank you, Joel. And to your point, it's obvious that, we're not going to regulate our way out of COVID, and it's really on each individual to practice social distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, all of that. So that's the public health effort of education over regulation, and boy, we're working at it.
I hear you. I don't envy you. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Joel. Anybody else, any questions or comments for Dan? I'm sorry, Bob.
Thank you. I would like to echo those comments, obviously, from public health to the emergency management and the IT people. Thank you for this whole, everything you're doing. I would just like to kind of put out there, whether it's a consideration for the public messaging. The thing that I think has sort of maybe added a little worry is when, and I try not to watch the news too much, because it seems like it just spins out of control. But people seem to be who want to just be defiant, and they won't wear a mask. And I think part of the messaging to me, if I were to have anything to do with it, would just be and maybe it's part of our Door County, how we brand our reception of this whole thing, is that wearing a mask is showing respect for the people around you. As Sue has told us numerous times, if anybody's paying attention, the mask doesn't keep you from getting the virus. The mask is for you to prevent the spread in the chance you do have it. And I think maybe if that simple message can be part of our thing, that, by wearing the mask, you're showing respect. And why wouldn't you show respect? And that's the only thing that I've been sort of concerned about, is I worry, like, oh my gosh, with this summer coming on, people are going to come here. Of course they are. They're going to want to get away from everything they've been dealing with, and they're going to come here. And I think that's to an extent okay. And we just have to figure out how to do it right. And as you said, Joel, the businesses and Sue, we're not going to regulate our way out of COVID. People need to, we have the information, the knowledge is out there. We've been listening. We know nothing's going to change in that regard. We basically have the facts. Now it's time to move forward and act. And I just think if part of that message can be about the masking is actually showing respect. You wear your mask out of respect for the people around you. And that's, I think, would maybe help that a little bit. Anyway, my 2 cents. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Bob. Kara?
Yes, thank you. I would also love to echo and say how grateful I am for Sue and Dan. It seems really, I feel really good about what you're saying, and so I wanted to say thank you. And I loved what Bob said, and I also wanted to add the word maybe like solidarity, because it feels like people want to be defiant, but if you think of it as a form of solidarity and of keeping other people safe, that seemed like a really great collective word to me. I think that's about all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Anybody else? I guess I just want to echo for everybody to thank Dan and Sue for everything that you've done. You'll continue to do. We still have a long ways to go, and I know the two of you have a lot of work ahead of you, and we do appreciate what you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
David.
This is not an insult to those two departments because they are the ones everybody sees up in front. But remember, every other department in this county is working hard and dealing with these issues.
Oh, absolutely.
They have done a very good job. Specifically is the facilities and parks and the IT department, and working around just talk about our own county board activities here. This is not easy, and it's going to cost us a lot of time and money and grief, but everybody has been doing a very good job.
Definitely, no doubt about it. Joel?
Yeah, I just got one final question I'd like to ask before we kind of wrap things up, it sounds like, but to Sue or Dan, I might have missed it. Any anticipated timeline on when you believe that you guys will be able to make a decision so the public becomes aware through different venues of exposure to let everybody know kind of what our game plan is going forward here for the next, like you said, 6 days or 10 days, whatever it might be?
Timeline?
Sorry, Joel, timeline for what?
Well, when you play, obviously right now with the states stopping everything, it's kind of a free-for-all at this point in time until the county or yourself makes a determination on something. So my question then is, are you going to try and have something for the public to be aware of, or the county to know by today, couple days, by Monday or the weekend? That's my timeline question, I guess.
Sure. Yes, optimistically early this afternoon.
Okay, then I apologize. You had made that comment before and I just misunderstood it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, nobody else asking. We will move on. Announcements. Our next regular county board meeting. What?
Actually, we're not quite done yet. There's a couple other things I just needed to cover.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the reopening, but there's, I guess, two aspects that I just want to bring the county board to make sure they're aware. Sorry. Joel and I said, "Oh, Joel, we're not done yet." Sorry. Just let me lose your time. I'll try to be brief, but I think it's important that we cover it. Two things. One is this also what the county is doing. And I guess, again, from my perspective, I've been working along with, I guess I consider a team and trying to run through David as well as what do we do as a county in terms of our operations. And again, this based off, I think I'm trying to be positive, but it's just a lack of guidance from the state and where their directions and where they're focused. So as an organization, we also need to decide what we're going to do. And there are significant requirements that we need to follow here, regardless of what the state decides in terms of regulations from the CDC, in terms of making sure we provide a safe work environment. So this is the last page of your packet that was there. This was page 24. That's just an outline of all the things that we're trying to address in terms of reopening, in terms of the operation. So even with the order being, I guess, null and void as of right now, I guess I consider what I've talked with David is, in essence, as far as our operations, we're going to continue, in essence, status quo, in the sense that we're going to, and I'm calling it kind of a virtual June. In essence, we're opening, right, and we're operating, but what we're going to try and do is make sure that we're maintaining all the requirements from the CDC. So that means a lot of our employees will still be working from home through June. We'll be trying to open up our offices, but we'll try to stagger when staff are in those offices, make sure we're practicing the social distancing and all those types of factors. We'll still probably focus on having our interactions with the public as much as we can, either via the phone or virtual meetings or by appointment. But in essence, we're open and running and operating, but we are still, from my standpoint, from the safety standpoint, irregardless of what the state says, there's requirements that I have to make sure we follow for providing a safe work environment. And there's all these things that we have listed on this outline that we have to do. So again, from our standpoint, we're still operating, in essence, status quo is how we are right now. And I foresee that going through all of June. in terms of that we'll continue to phase employees coming back into the building, but it's going to be staggered. We're still going to do our interactions and services to our customers and residents of Door County, but it's going to be different in terms of how we engage with the public and our customers in doing that. So I just wanted to make the county board aware of what we're trying to do. And again, I'm just, there's no magic to calling it, through the end of June, but it just seems to be a natural fit for us in terms of trying to, work through that process of bringing employees back in and making sure we're matching the CDC guidelines and also the advice from Sue in terms of making sure we have a safe work environment. I don't know if there's any specific questions regarding the building opening or operations, but I guess I'd take any of those if you have them.
We have several. Alexis?
Thank you, Chairman. I guess I just want to recognize that regardless of how much we want to get back and the best laid plans need to recognize a certain portion of employees are still beholden to childcare availability. And I know the DCEDC put out the survey. I encourage people to go take it. And that needs to be, I just want to make the comment, I guess, that we need to consider that too, because as a working mom with two parents working, it's difficult and stressful, and talking about reopening just adds another layer of uncertainty when childcare is still not planning to be available. So I appreciate this plan. I think it's great. I want to make the comment. I feel obligated to make the comment. So thank you.
Thank you. Vinny?
Yes, I would agree with that. If there can be some provisions taken to accommodate families then when they cannot have childcare, modeling that as a county, I think would be a good model for the rest of the county. I also just wanted to say thank you for putting this plan in place. I think it's really important that as the county, we're modeling what we are expecting from businesses as these plans develop. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Susan?
I have a question and a comment. I guess I'll do the comment first. I think that we all hope that the fact that this circumstance has required our public health department to reach out with this bridge statement, that we have to assume that the state has gotten the message loud and clear that they're leaving us in the lurch and they need to do their job. And I truly appreciate Joel Kitchens for coming and sharing what he had to share. So I'm going to be the pushy lady again and suggest that maybe, even though I don't see how they could miss the uproar that's going on in Wisconsin right now, it wouldn't hurt all of us as 21 representatives of this county to share with our two legislators and our governor that it's time that they get their act together on this. And they need to do it by the time all of our extensions and so on, or we'll be back in this same spot. I mean, the past is the past. Politics needs to be done. They need to do their jobs. So I got to stop preaching because my husband, if he's listening at home, will be laughing right now. But my question is, but if you don't know how to do that, if you need the numbers or whatever, I'm happy to give them to you. My question, though, is about the library. Will we be expanding from the Sturgeon Bay Library to branches, or is that yet to be determined?
Yes, part of our plan will be looking at all the operations across the board. And one of the things we did talk with Tina about is we will be trying to, open up our library branches. But again, that'll also be, limiting in terms of how we do it. So it'll probably be something similar to what we've been testing the past week and a half or so with our library here, is probably doing a curbside service. So I don't foresee us opening the doors wide open at this point in time at our branches, but probably doing a curbside service where you can order stuff like that, and we'll have stuff dropped off and picked up. But that's what our intention is.
Okay. Anybody else? Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback on that regarding the libraries, do we have any sense, because we're part of a larger library system and there's no circulation happening right now, do we have any sense when that circulation might be available? Even if people are stepping in at different rates, we are able to get books from Appleton and Oneida and different communities around us. And obviously, it's great. And I mean, I encourage us to do whatever we can to safely get our own libraries open again. Maybe it's just because I recently was looking at making some requests and wasn't able to do it, but the books or the things that I want are from outside of, so I'm wondering about the larger circulation. Do you have any sense of when that circulation will continue, or we'd be able to have that availability again?
I don't have any specific dates in regards to that right now, but I know it's been an issue. And I know the library system in general is also discussing about handling materials. And I know that'll be a concern as well. But I know, Tina, when they do understand how things will be operating, they're trying to do their Facebook and also their media outreach to let people know how they can engage libraries. I know a lot of people have been interested in having that service available.
Thank you for the information.
Nissa?
I just want to add this to Bob and whoever doesn't know this. The library also has apps, Overdrive and Hoopla, where you can borrow books virtually for free, included with your library card. You can read stuff on Kindle, an iPhone, your computer, Android, whatever system you have. So you can still get books virtually, even if you can't get them necessarily in person. And that, I would just want everyone to know, including whoever may be listening to this constituent-wise, so that way you know that you do still have options. The library isn't fully shut down to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions about that? Okay, I have my glasses on now, and I see that we also have fiscal projections to be handed out at the meeting.
Thank you. All right, so I did.
Good job.
So this one's kind of more of an FYI. I'm not looking for any type of motion today in this. This is more discussion, but if you want to give me some initial guidance or advice, I'm open to it. But again, I just want to talk about maybe what we're seeing in terms of the fiscal impact. So there's two handouts. One is from Ford Analytics, which is a division within WCA, Wisconsin Counties Association. And the first page just gives you an idea of how they looked at how they came up with their numbers. But in essence, if you looked at the numbers, they actually did two projections. If you go to page 2 of the handout, you'll see DOR. They did an initial projection in April, where DOR was projected to be about 790,000 short on sales tax revenues. Then what they did is they just did an updated one for May, and they're projecting about 928,000 in lost sales tax revenue for DOR County. That'll be for the rest of the year. I ran similar numbers just based off our actual collections, and I projected about $1 million. So I think we're both probably in the same ballpark. And again, it's always going to vary. And obviously now with the order expiring, who knows what the exact numbers will be. I guess that's my biggest concern, is just trying to draw that to your attention. And really what you want to do is then go to, the next sheet, which shows you what I put down the COVID-19 DOR County 2020 budget impact. So the first line that you'll see is just under general administration. And then what I try to do is I try to mirror the budget that you always familiar with seeing. So it's the sales taxes inside that general administration. So we usually, we actually budget about 3.7 million. And last year we received about 4.2 million. So there's a little bit of difference. So I guess what you're seeing is that you'll see that the state's projecting about 928. In my model right now, I'm projecting about a $440,000 hit in terms of loss. And again, the difference is really that we only projected 3.75 coming into our budget. So that, I guess, additional revenue that was planned that they're working on for model, I wasn't planning that as income. So that was our, I guess, part of our safety net. But that being said, we're looking at that shortage on the far right. You're seeing my net impact of the budget. Then what I did ask is I asked each department head to go through and look at their projected changes in revenues and expenditures. And in some areas, they were able to do that. And in some areas, honestly, it's just too early, just in terms of how we report the numbers. But, some of the areas that stand out, you can kind of see. again, so the courts, obviously they're not functioning, so they're losing revenues from that standpoint. The treasurer, now that we're also going to do the deferred interest, we'll see an impact about 50,000 that Jay's projecting there. The sheriff right now is just based off loss projections in terms of revenue, but then also there's our increased expenditures with the new schedules that we have in place with the sheriff, which even with the order being expired, I've received that going on for at least a little bit more in terms of duration of time. So right now, our initial projection is about 189,000. So on the first page, you'll see under the general fund, we're looking at approximately 671,000. Then if you turn the page, you're not going to see a whole much. And the one area that I've been working with Joe the most on would be under Health and Human Services and ADRC. This with their collections, if you understand, they're also similar to like the sales tax. They're so far, I'm not saying behind, but their lag time between billing and receivables and all that stuff coming in and services provided is so far behind. And there's so much stuff going on in terms of, we could be losing revenue, but there's also federal money coming in through the CARES Act, and there's additional state money that Joe just said for right now. I said, just leave it that we're neutral. He says 2 months from now, I could give you a better projection, but right now I'm just guessing. So I said, okay, let's just leave it. So this is just a snapshot of today, just knowing what the facts are, what we know, but we could be better or worse depending on what happens in terms of federal dollars and all that type of stuff. So again, remember when I mentioned that, that one of the stimulus packages that had all the money coming to the state and WCA was asking for 30% of those funds. I have no projection of those funds coming to us because I'm not going to rely on the state until I see it in writing, right? But again, that could be money that we would receive that would take care of all this. Anyways, long story short, you'll see that we have a total of about 783,000 that we're looking in terms of, I guess what I consider a budget shortage. And what we have in terms of expenditures, special expenditures as far as this equipment purchases or acquisitions, that type of thing outside of authorizing staff time, or about another additional 50,000. So long story short, you're looking at about 850,000 that we're projecting in terms of a shortage so far. The reason I just bring it to you is one is I just think it's something we have to discuss in terms of the organization. And again, I think this will be also a changing target. But again, what I need guidance from the county board is how do you want me to start looking at this and addressing it? And in my mind, there's the range of how that could be addressed. So the first one could be, well, let's wait and let's see if we do see any federal stimulus money. But also you could say that, well, this is a pandemic and we built our reserves. That's what the reserves is for. Let's use in reserves. We're just going to plan on using the reserves. That's one way for me to handle it. The other end of the spectrum is going to be, okay, we instituted some furloughs. You've heard examples like UW-Madison and other agencies that are now requiring employees to do a 1 week of no pay type thing. And you could have me look at that as an option, because really in terms of our expenditures, I could probably go back and say, okay, department's working, I cut expenditures, but a lot of it's going to be always coming back to our personnel costs. So I guess that'd be the other end of the spectrum would we do staggered furloughs for all individuals in the organization, or look at that option. I guess, and then obviously the in between is you say, okay, we want so much we'll take it out of reserve, but the other part, I want you to target and get that out. So I guess I'm just trying to bring the attention to you of, we are getting hit financially in regards to this. The main portion is the sales tax. Again, the sales tax, depending on what happens now with this going on, it could be not as bad, or depending on what happens if we have many waves or something like that, it could get worse. We're all in this together, and I'm just trying to get the projections on it. But I guess what I really need to do is, how do you want me to anticipate and start planning for it? Again, some of the federal programs, they actually, I'm not sure if they're going to extend them, but I know some of them go through the end of August. So for example, if you wanted to recover some of those types of funds, it would be advantageous to not only the organization, but if we would do this to the employee, if you wanted them to qualify for the stimulus incentive in terms of that $600, you want to do that within that window of time. So I guess I'm not trying to say, hey, let's do it, because I care about the employees and it weighs heavily on me. But again, if you're going to do it, you may as well try to provide a benefit to them in terms of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the organization, but also let them leverage the federal care money for that as well. So again, it's just a snap up time. It's going to be changing and evolving, but I guess what I was hoping to do is bring it up here today. You're more than welcome to discuss it. I was going to also put it on the finance and also the admin committee agenda. But again, I guess, at some point in time, whether it's towards the end of this month yet, or if you want to go in, but I think some of the time, if we do want to address something, that we should have that discussion. So I'll defer it back down to David to see.
Okay. Dave, Enigo.
To your question, it always makes me nervous to rely on an outside entity for our income that is not guaranteed. It wouldn't be the first time that we were promised something that never came to bat and ended up costing us more money than it was. So part of me says we got to stay within our world, recognize the shortcomings that are happening and finding ways, and that stuff, that's your job. You're my only employee. But work reasonably well with the rest of our 350 employees that accomplishing and keeping us afloat as a business. One of the real reason I put up my request to speak was people don't see this. They're all seeing the COVID activities, the restrictions that are going on, but they're not seeing the background that's costing different pieces other than who's ever on the news. This is kind of information, we're a government body. We're in the process of doing our budget for 2021. Can we get like a section underneath COVID to show losses that our businesses are working on, these kinds of documents? If we have a webpage that's got that information, that we can add this to it.
Yeah, I know. The only response I'd have to that is I know that DCEC has done, I guess, one initial survey, and I think there was another survey that they put out that they're actually tracking and looking at, I guess, losses in Dark County. And I know they did an initial report on it, but I could follow up with Steve Jacobs and see if they actually have the fiscal impact of what they're projecting for our business impact.
Well, I'm looking more for our budget.
Oh, sure.
So because we have people that watch our budget, that scream bloody murder, we even make adjustments. Excuse my language, folks, but that's reality. These are, as you said, these are constantly changing. But if we have these dated documents, because they're out in the public record now, to show that we are not just sitting still and waiting, we are accepting data and making adjustments, and this is going to affect what we do in 2021. It's just a fact. It's going to affect what we're going to do at the tail end of this year. And it just would be nice to show that kind of data to the general, have it easily accessible in our control to the general public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Joel.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, I wanted to echo what Dave just said exactly to a T verbatim. Spot on. I guess my take on this would be to, for lack of a better point or term, to develop and work through our budget process for the next year as status quo. Keep our fingers crossed that we'll get some, crumbs from stimulus or something in the future here. But, with the public knowing and us all knowing that we're coming up with a moving target of shortfalls, that best case $1 million, and it'll probably be more, and if we have the ability, Ken, like you said, that we know that money is sitting in the backside to fulfill it, but we still need, it's there to use, but we still need to develop our budget with as tight of margins as possible, as we've always done in the past. So to make these big drastic decisions right now, in my opinion, is a little hasty, because we have a few months here to see how things shake out. But for the purposes of planning the 2021 budget, I would suggest we just do it as it's always been, and plan for worst case, and reflect that in the numbers from the various departments. And again, hope that we get something as trickle down from higher up as the season progresses here.
Just the one thing, just to add on the budget. So this is just the impact I'm looking at for 2020. This is the initial thing that, I guess, what was a benefit to us. Like I said, we under project our revenues for sales tax. So it's a savior for this year in terms of that 440,000 projection right now. But it's also a hindrance in that we also built into the budget model about 200,000 that would be in surplus, that would be carried in to offset the budget. So this, for starting our budget next year, we have that deficit built in just on the sales tax side. So,
yep, I hear you.
So yeah, it's one of those things already where it's hitting us on both this year and next year without even doing anything. So
yep, I hear you 100%. And I think Mr. Enigo is spot on. It would be advantageous to keep transparent to the public, it might not be a bad idea to put something like this as what is the direct impact now and the forecasted impact for the future, and put that front and center on the county's homepage below, health data, because the reality is internet traffic is up 70%, and I don't see that that's down in Door County. Everybody's looking and reading and getting their mitts on everything they can see, and making them aware of what's going on is in our best interest.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. Susan?
I agree with both of these gentlemen and what they've said. I'm wondering if it is possible not just to send this to finance and admin, but put it on the agenda of every single committee so that every single supervisor has a chance to be thinking about it in the next month, and the ramifications for the departments that are under those oversight committees. So that by the time this comes around to us needing to give you more specific guidance, we've all had a chance to chew on it a while. Would that give us time if we did a whole cycle of meetings to do that?
Laura?
Great. Yeah, this got brought up at Public Safety, and Joe Gunson is chair for that, and with Dan King report. So at that time, we had asked and requested if our administrator would bring a report to finance next week on that. And with the supervisor cohort, yes, I think that's a great idea to bring it to each committee. I think it gives a better perspective. And sometimes when we dive into that, then we can actually, we're learning more of the implication and how our actions have reactions with the cost. So if that helps to the administrator for direction, then I'll continue to charge on. Thanks.
Thank you. David Engelbert.
Yes, I was glad that the issue of the reserves from the sales tax just came up. But when we, looking back to our earlier discussion about difficulty people paying taxes, not to re-debate that, but I think it's hopefully the experts are right here that we're that close to getting 3/4 of our usual sales tax. But when you look at all the events through the summer that are already canceled, and I can't imagine we're even going to come close to that, but that's just my wild venture to guess. And, then not only the next coming years, we're not going to have that extra reserve to apply again either. So it's going to hit us harder than I think these numbers are showing.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Anybody else have any comments or input for Ken? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question that I just want to ask. It's a general question about, that doesn't really have anything to do with this, so I didn't want to interrupt, but I think we're kind of done. I was just curious, do we know the status of these meetings? I mean, generally, these meetings are filmed and they're online. Now that we're doing this format with distancing and, what we're doing right now, is this being recorded in any way for future reference by the public?
Lonnie is on. I know I actually have him on the thing, but I know he's actually recording it. And the last 2 meetings, he's actually has those posted for us.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we said, no, that we're not capable of taping these, but I'm glad this is being taped and the public can still access these as they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? Okay, we will move to announcements. The next regular county board meeting is May 26th at 10 a.m. Do you have any announcements, Ken?
No. Just one thing I will echo I know I just mentioned that Jason and Joe probably put in a couple of nights this week just to get this to work out. I'm hoping that we're trying to get this out where we can communicate and see what's happening with all the stuff. So I appreciate they're doing it. I appreciate your patience. So we're not trying to constantly change it. We're just trying to make improvements. So I appreciate your patience and everything coming together. So thank you for that.
Well, it is getting better and better. So thank you. The per diem code is 514. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good enough. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a code for that Zoom thing?